Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, and over the next hour, we'll talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, and the Tulane Green Wave. And as always, we've got a fantastic panel for you tonight. Juan Kincaid of WWL TV Sports, and Mike Triplett of ESPN. Guys, thanks so much for being with us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, first of all, I guess we'll jump into it. If you would, first tell us a little bit about what's going on over at Channel 4. What's going on with you?
The same thing with Mike. It's busy. I mean, all your teams are winning. First time we've been able to say that in probably a decade, with Tulane playing well at 5-2 and LSU still going for the championship, and both the SEC and the NCAA and of course our Saints, we're 5-1. You know, I feel like I'm on the team, but you lose a tough game in New England, and you really had a chance to win there. But still, you're going into the bye week after 6 weeks of playing at 5-1. You can't be complaining about that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Mike, after years with the Picayune, you've made a move now to ESPN. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, it's ESPN, but it's still very local.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, ESPN decided to sort of have a local affiliate almost in every market, which is great for the NFL. The NFL is so popular, and fans want local. You know, I mean, I'm sure for years around here, although the Saints started to get a lot of good national attention in the last 4 or 5 years, they're still like, they don't know our team. So I love the move they made. They've done this in all 32 markets, hired beat writers to be there on the ground every day to cover every team on a local basis. And obviously, no matter where I've worked for, it's all Saints all the time. I'm aware of LSU and Tulane, but the NFL is a year-round sport.
It's got that face for TV. Right, baby. Welcome to the other side.
Yeah, exactly. Well, don't give me some pointers.
Yeah, no doubt. Plus, honestly, the website is a good place to catch you.
That's mostly where it is, ESPN.com. Yeah, there are some TV and radio appearances, obviously, but mostly they've really amped up the coverage on ESPN.com.
Well, guys, both of you were in Foxborough. Again, first of all, a great game. I mean, really a great game. It was obviously heartbreaking for Saints fans, but your synopsis of the game.
Well, I thought that the Saints, truthfully, they probably shouldn't have been in the game at the end of the day anyway. You know, New England dropped a lot of passes. And when you give Tom Brady 3 opportunities to get a 2-minute drive right, more than likely, if it was the other way around with Drew Brees, they will get it right. So I think the Saints were fortunate to be in it and be leading late in the game. The defense played as well as I've seen them play all year long, especially in the second half. Not so well in the first half. But it was a game the Saints should have won, but you lose that. But again, you're 5-1 and not 6-0. There's a lot to be thankful for.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. I've talked to people, and I kind of got this sense, too, while the game was going on. Oh yeah, this loss was kind of tough, but we're 5-1.
Yeah.
And really, I talked to somebody who said that it's the least they've ever gotten upset over a Saints loss. And they're playing with house money, being 5-0 going into that game, and it was at New England, and they were down for so long. They were down for 2 hours. They didn't have that lead until late in the game. So I do think even the Saints might eventually feel that way. And in that sense, the bye probably comes at a good time. They deserve to be 5-1 through 6 games. They pulled out the first 2 that came down to the last play, and they lost this one. Of course they wanted to win this game. Of course it's a heartbreaker. It would have meant a lot to them to win at New England. That's still special to them. But 5-1, they're still in a good place, and I don't think their confidence was shaken because, as Juan said, the offense rallied strong in the second half. The defense played great for most of the second half. The run game even showed up in the second half. So I think their confidence will still be sky high when they return to work after the bye week.
And one thing coaches are always saying, players will say, the perfect throw is undefensible. Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at the throw they made to Kenny Stills. I mean, he had 2 guys around him. It was the perfect throw. The throw to Tompkins was the perfect throw. I mean, Jabari Greer is outstretched on that play.
Agreed.
If it's 2 inches lower, he tips out of bounds to go to the next down. So sometimes it doesn't matter what you draw up. It's the way the ball is thrown and the way the guy making a great play.
Well, and I agree with you. I mean, if you flip it around for Saints fans and you tell Saints fans, we're going to give Drew Brees 3 shots with 2 minutes left to win a game. Most people are going to say, you know what, we're going to win that game.
Yeah. He said in the locker room after the game, in Tampa, it was the exact opposite. We were like, get us the ball back one more time. Get us the ball back one more time. They got it back. They moved down the field, get to Garrett Holyfield when they win the game. So when you give a Hall of Fame quarterback opportunities 3, it's not going to end well for you. You just know it's not.
No, and honestly, that's the way I think a lot of fans are looking at it and should look at it, because Tom Brady is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And we've got one here in New Orleans with Drew Brees, and it's kind of the same scenario.
Well, it just felt so funny because when the Saints, when he got his second shot, the first time it was a turnover on downs quickly. The second shot, they intercepted on the very first pass.
Yes.
Poor clock management by the Saints defense there. Wait till third down for that interception.
At least run around in
That drive took like 5 seconds off the clock. So, no, but I mean, they keep saying that 3 shots, and it sounds egregious. It's not that egregious because one of those shots was a 5-second drive, So, and the clock just worked in the Patriots' favor. And I don't know if you want to get into this or not, but there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking about the conservative Sean Payton. And I'm kind of like, I've heard people criticize him for throwing DeMarcus Colston on the first 3rd and 7, and then running on the other plays. One of the runs was an outside pitch. I mean, you can't win. You got to execute. I think that's the Saints' biggest regret is that they didn't execute. They had a 2nd and 6 on that first drive, and they had a minus run that gave them a 3rd and 7. I think their biggest regret is that they didn't, get it to 3rd and 2 and then convert. But the play calls themselves, deciding to run or pass. If you pass and you throw incomplete, you just get murdered for leaving too much time on the clock. So they didn't execute, but I don't think you can blame them for strategy.
No, I would agree with that. Juan, you?
Well, I think, the Monday morning quarterback, as you mentioned, I kept hearing it. This is a perfect example of why fans need to just slow down for a second. I'm on the plane coming back, and in front of me there are Patriots fans going from Miami to New Orleans. In front of them, Saints fans.
They got to that flight before you. I noticed them leaving the stadium early, by the way.
In front of them, Saints fans, and the guy turns around to the Saints fans and says, that was a great game. Wasn't bragging or anything. And the first thing out of the Saints fans' mouth was, oh, the refs really screwed us. They really tore us up. And I was just like, wait a minute. There were some questions.
There were.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, if your offense, which is has traditionally been one of the best in the league since '06, if they can't find a way to get a first down in 2 or 3 different opportunities, can't have better clock management, then maybe you don't deserve to win that football game, no matter what happened. At the end of the day, those 2 plays didn't affect the final outcome of the game. The Saints' inability to manage the clock the right way, get a first down, that affected the outcome of the game.
Yeah, Mike, I would agree with that. I mean, the officiating at times, there
were some that
there were.
Maybe more than most games.
But you can't blame this game on the officiating.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, it really came down to the Saints executing down the stretch.
I agree. And I know a lot of people are talking about the holding call on the touchdown, or the non-holding call on the touchdown. And
don't forget the extra timeout too.
Well, that one actually didn't happen. And if you look at that holding call, especially the people who had the still photo of it, it does look really bad. I don't remember thinking it at the time while I was watching the game. I don't remember players talking about it afterward, and I don't even know for sure that it would have stopped Tom Brady from making that throw. So if you look at every call as a microcosm, then you can get really upset over it. But yeah, the team that made the more plays in that game. Now the Saints almost pulled it out, and we would have spent this whole 50 minutes talking about that Breeze 3rd and 20 touchdown pass to Kenny Stills.
Absolutely.
Instead, that becomes an by the way play.
Yeah.
But even then, you cannot expect an official to bail you out. In I don't care in what sport you're in.
Right.
At the end of the game, you pretty much you're not going to get that type of call. So and I've seen that on the Saints side as well.
A non-holding call.
Non-holding call.
A bad holding call is actually, I think if the fans were going to be upset about any call more than any, it was getting Jari Evans for false start
in the neutral zone.
4th and 1
Right.
when he didn't.
Agreed.
That was something where you penalized for something that they didn't do wrong. That I'd be more upset about that than a non-call.
And they always talk about when it comes to that neutral zone thing, it has to be a natural reaction, not a delayed reaction. I mean, it couldn't get more natural.
Right.
The guy jumps in the neutral zone and Jari reacts right away.
Right.
And
Right.
I just thought that was a really
There were a
bad
couple
no call.
spots also that maybe where you you could question, but come on. The Saints got back in this game. They had a chance to win it. As you mentioned, Mike,
the Patriots
they just
deserved it on that final stretch.
They did. They just didn't execute. It is a copycat league. We know that. And of course, again, one of the things that coaches can take from this is some of the things that work. And let's talk about the defense for a second. Defense has played magnificent this season. But up-tempo offense, not allowing those packages to be put in by Rob Ryan. How much did that affect this team in this game? And will there be an opportunity for coaches to try to copycat that? Mike, will take you first.
A little bit. I mean, it's similar to what Sean Payton said about will other teams copy what the Patriots did on defense. It's like, you got to have the players. You got to be able to pull it off. If a team's not used to being an up-tempo, no-huddle team, the Saints will invite you to go ahead and try to get out of your own comfort zone. I think it did maybe affect the Saints a little in that they weren't prepared for it. But ultimately, I think they kind of settled in. I have a hard time. This game is so weird because you want to say they played so well against the Patriots, but were these even the Patriots? Like, those receivers dropping balls. I mean, you just who knows what we were looking at in that game. But, yeah, most teams that the Saints are going to face, maybe they'd be in trouble if they go against Peyton Manning and his no-huddle, hurry-up offense. But how many teams like that are on the schedule? We're going to get to a part of the schedule where we're going to be talking about the running quarterbacks soon. They haven't seen that yet. Correct. I think that will be something they're going to have to adjust to. I don't know how many teams we're going to say, we figured out how to beat the Saints defense. Let's quickly add a new hurry-up package to what we do.
And I think, I was listening to the radio on the way over here. I think the team really could have used Lance more. I think he's a guy that if he was in the offense, you have another target to throw to, and a guy that has really trusted hands. What disappointed me about the defense, is that they were too slow to adjust to the hurry-up offense. I thought that came down to the game came down to coaching first half. Is that Bill Belichick had designed a game plan to beat the Saints, which was one, keep Jimmy Graham. Let anybody else beat you, keep Jimmy Graham from catching the ball, and on offense, they were going to dictate the pace of the game.
For sure.
I think the Saints could have dictated the pace of the game if they had decided to run the ball earlier. Like, I'm not a coach, but what I would have done and says, Vince Wilfork is not in the game. He may be the best defensive tackle in the NFL when he's healthy. He's not in the game. There's two backup guys in there filling in for one guy, and I would have tried to run the ball a little bit earlier. Instead, they tried to throw the ball, force the ball to Jimmy Graham when there's other options out there. So, we can all sit here and second guess like we will always do every day on a Monday and Tuesday. But, but those are two. That's probably the thing I think, they were too slow to adjust on defense to kind of, I guess, maybe dictate the flow of play a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball against that hurry-up offense.
Staying with, again, a copycat league, and again, even Sean Payton kind of addressed it in his press conference. Jimmy Graham shut down. When you start looking at how the New England Patriots ultimately did that, is this something that teams can take away and possibly utilize against Jimmy Graham?
Well, Ben Watson made a good point after the game. He said, you know what, Jimmy, we've been able to get the ball to him every game, and this time it didn't happen. There are good defensive players out there. There are good coordinators out there that design game plans. Jimmy, we have to remember, he's only 4 years into playing football, and maybe this is the first time someone equally skilled as him on the defensive side of the ball has gotten in his face, hit him in the mouth, and he didn't know how to respond. And so I think this is going to help him going forward. He's probably going to start looking for defensive players to play him that way, and he's going to have to counteract that. But also, the Saints have to make a decision. Drew Brees has to make a decision that if Jimmy's not there, I have to look at option 1B. I have to look at maybe Marcus Colston, who we didn't call his name the entire first half. I have to start looking at other guys, And
I do agree with you about Lance Moore. I really think that Lance Moore plays in that game. He's going to get a lot of underneath, going to get open underneath, and he can be a security blanket for Drew Brees if they take.
Well, I think they're having to depend too much on guys like Stills and Tune, who they've been fantastic this year. They've done what you expected.
But they're young.
But they're young players, and in a pressure situation like the Patriots, the big moment, that big night game, you need a guy like Lance Moore who's a calming influence on the field.
Missed Tune on a potential touchdown pass that was pretty costly too, and it looked like a high throw from Brees, but you do wonder, did Tune not hit the spot Brees? That you don't know for sure, but that's a miscommunication thing. The Patriots, I did the film study on this game, and I noticed this in general while we were watching it, but I noticed even more. Look, go ahead and try to take Jimmy Graham out of the game plan, and the Saints don't. I was actually surprised. There were 2 or 3 times when Brees did look like he tried to force it into Graham, almost kind of stubbornly, like, we're not going to let you take him away from us. That's not normally what the Saints do. The Saints normally invite it and say, fine, pick your poison. What the Patriots did that I do not think other teams can copy, they put their best corner on Jimmy Graham, and their other corners were still fantastic. This, I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name already. See how much respect I have for him. Number 37, who played against Marcus Colston, was just as good. I mean, I made a point to watch Colston when I went back and to see, was he open? And that guy, and they're jamming him, they're bumping him, they're shielding him, getting away with this
Mike,
as much as they
can. I expected Colston to be able to handle it better than
But
Jimmy
he can,
did.
but he's not getting open early on those routes. And so Brees, and they're not pass rushing. They're 4 and 3 rushers. So Brees had all day to throw.
He did.
And you just watch him, and you watch the frustration mount. It's like, he's not open, he's not open, he's not open. And, sure, it's a copycat league, and you can say that's the way to do it, but do other teams have the manpower to do that? Because we saw the Miami Dolphins come into the Superdome, and they held Jimmy Graham without a catch for like 21 minutes. And by that time, Sproles already had 114 receiving yards. Colston finished with 96 receiving yards in that game. It's pick your poison with this team. The Patriots are just really good at it. They've really got the manpower on defense. But that is the formula for disrupting the Saints' passing offense. The thing it reminded me of, there were so many years where the Saints struggled against the Carolina Panthers with John Fox when he had big, physical, good defensive backs. And that has always been the best formula for shutting down the Saints' offense. It's just a lot easier said than done. That'd be great if every team had the kind of secondary to do that.
It was kind of where I was going to go next, guys, about the lack of separation between the receivers and getting off the jam, even separating in the open field. When the Saints have struggled with the passing game, that has been kind of the formula for their lack of success. I think we saw a lot of that on Sunday.
Why? I don't think Marcus Colston's ever been a guy that's going to get much separation. I think Marcus he uses his body very well. He has fantastic hands. He's like a basketball player. And I think Jimmy Graham needs to watch how Marcus has played in the past when it comes to shaking off those bumps at the line and getting open. But again, it goes back to the receivers that you have. Again, you got 2 young players out there that are still learning the NFL game at the regular speed now, not just practice speed. You have Lance Moore, who's been out the last 3 games, who, in my opinion, would have been a huge addition in this game, because where guys weren't getting open like a Jimmy Graham, then you would think that Brees is going to say, okay, let me check down to Lance, or let me check down to Marcus Colston.
And the trust factor there with Moore as well.
There's a very big trust factor. I mean, they've been together, 6 years now?
Oh, gee, no, the whole 8.
The whole
6. So, I mean, there's that trust factor that's been built over time, and just like it's been built with Marcus Colston. It hasn't been built with Tune and Stills, but it's going to get there. But it's not there yet. So I just think, again, Mike said it, in the years past, this team Drew Brees hasn't said, you know what, I'm going to get this ball to this guy if it kills me. And that's what he did against Jimmy Graham, over the weekend.
You were right about, it was a surprise that they were a little slow to adjust. They got there. The whole second half was fine. And they marched down the field several times in the second half. Ben Watson got wide open a couple times. That touchdown pass to Travaris Cadet happened in the first quarter. That was perfect. It was like, Jimmy Graham, take the traffic away.
And then he just kind of slid in.
So they're still good at that. I'm not worried. I wouldn't be worried about the Saints passing offense going forward, because I just think they had the right opponent, the right game plan, the perfect storm. Probably how the Chicago Bears felt after that game last week. They're like, man, they had you felt the exact same way about the Saints. Just had the right plan and the right execution. Going forward, I don't think that's going to be an issue. And really, it's funny because you look at the Saints at the break right now, and you think to yourself, have they underachieved? Have they overachieved? They've probably overachieved on defense, although I think they can maintain it. This offense can still be way better than it's seen, or more consistently better. They were saying that in the locker room on Monday. We're just starting to scratch the surface, and it feels great to be 5-1, knowing we haven't played our best football yet. When Brees says that, he means the passing offense hasn't played its best football.
If you look at the offense, I think if you look at the Chicago game, it's probably the one game where they were clicking.
Yeah. The week before in Miami too.
Miami too. They haven't. This offense, we're used to seeing it being consistent over the course of 16 games. You're not seeing that this year yet.
Shock and awe.
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing. And the one thing they've been able, and I mentioned it on last week's show, they've been kind of a chameleon. They've been able to take what the defense gives them and again adjust their game plan to kind of fit what's going on in front of them defensively. And they went against a very good team with a great tactician in Bill Belichick, who obviously had a game plan for that offense. And he remembers the last time he played this team, and he wasn't too happy in the Superdome. If you remember back then.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of shock and awe, but you know what? I think that one good takeaway that they'll take away from the Patriots game is when the Patriots decided to sit back in coverage and not rush. They finally relied on their run game. It took them a while to do it. And like you said, that would have been your plan earlier. But they finally relied on it, and it came through for them. So that is actually one thing that overall they're going into the bye with their first loss. But their run game actually just had its best performance in the second half of their last game.
It's going to be interesting to see when Mark Ingram comes back. What do you do there? Because Kyrie Robinson has been your best running back.
I agree with
out of the
that.
backfield. He's been the best guy running the ball. I mean, Pierre's been obviously Pierre on screen passes, and he's consistent. But Kyrie's been your best running back, getting yards.
Best physical running back.
Best physical running back, and he's shown the ability that they thought when they got this kid late in the draft. I mean, it's going to be interesting with what happens to Mark Ingram.
I think Mark Ingram gets the opportunity because those first two games, whatever you want to say about Mark Ingram, the run game was not working.
It was terrible.
Right.
The offensive
it wasn't
line
working for Pierre Thomas. It wasn't working for Kyrie Robinson when he came in the third and fourth games. They all went backwards.
Yeah.
So, yes, Robinson is having this great success, and he really opened my eyes in the second half against New England. Some gorgeous runs. Cutbacks are great.
Yes.
But I think they give Mark Ingram the opportunity to say, we've got our run game working now. Can you take advantage of that? But I don't think you put Robinson on the bench. All of a sudden, here we are again.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, great. We run the ball 15 times a game. We got 4 guys we want to hand it off to.
Yeah, and it's one thing Pierre mentioned. This is maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. He said, you know what? Even though the running game, if it's not working, we can't abandon it. We have to keep on trying. And that's what I saw in the New England game. They abandoned the running game, and they started throwing it. Next thing you know, time of possession's all off and everything, and we don't get a chance. You don't get a chance in the first half to do anything, to build any kind of consistency.
Offensive line, guys. It looks like we heard that maybe it's not as talented as it's been in the past. Okay. We've also heard give them a chance, let them gel. They're going to come together. They played pretty well the last couple weeks. They really have. Mike, your thoughts on the offensive line and why are they playing better?
Well, against New England, I thought they played very well, although they weren't really challenged. I mean, all the things we said about the Saints passing game, that New England just wasn't challenging that much up front. Drew Brees had a lot of time to throw, and the run game was working when they finally went to it. I think the biggest problem early on was the injury to Jari Evans, and he looks like he's coming around. I also think Ben Grubbs looked like he was struggling a little earlier. He's played great these last couple of games. So your 2 guards are set, your 2 star players, and everything feeds off them. So I still think this is an asset for the team. I think the run game did take a while to gel, and it's never been their strength, let's be honest. But, they were really out of their element. We saw the exact same thing last year. Their first 4 or 5 weeks last year, the run game wasn't good. And then they started to gel and be okay. You go from Jermon Bushrod to Charles Brown. For this 1 week anyway, you went from Zach Strief to Bryce Harris. You move around a few pieces here and there, but in general, I still consider the offensive line an asset. I think the passing game is going to be fine. Drew Brees' sack total is nothing. Yeah. We're not even talking about that anymore. But of course, there's still going to be individuals that aren't having great moments. Charles Brown gave up a sack in this last game. The run game still, like I said, they went backwards when they really needed to go forward on that final drive, but they'd had a lot of nice runs. So, somewhere in between, but I'm not putting that anywhere near the list of biggest concerns with the Saints or anything like that.
I think one of the things that affected is losing Aaron Comer. I mean, I think you look at the job he did with this offensive line for the many years since he was here, always producing Pro Bowl players. You have a combination of losing him, and almost every year it seems like they've had to put a new piece in that offensive line, and it's had the mold and gel. I mean, you've lost Pro Bowl players who have moved on for bigger money. Think of Carl Nicks. So I think that's part of the reason why, too. People think that you just plug a guy in and it's going to work, but it's not like that. The guy's got to learn new systems. Got used to playing with teammates beside him, and it's got to gel as a unit and play as one. So I think the offensive line is going to get better, but Mike's right. They've never been a great run-blocking offensive line. This offense wasn't built to be a great run-blocking team. It was built to throw the ball first and run the ball second, and hopefully the pass opens up the run. And so, look, we all like to see Deuce McAllister on the field and run up 150 yards, but this offense isn't built like that anymore. It's not built that way.
Is it a concern that the Saints could not run in crunch time when they needed to run, when they needed to close out a game? And is that a red flag going forward?
Well, I'm not so much concerned about it because, look, New England knew you weren't going to be throwing the ball. They knew you wanted to run clock, so they were going to put 9
on
in the
that
box.
last drive especially.
Yes.
The last drive. They knew that. So it's hard to put 7 on 9. It's hard to run against that any day of the week. So it's not a concern for me. You know, everyone's always talked about this team being a dome team going to the outdoors. How can they survive? Well, they survived playing well up in Chicago, won that game. They go to New England. They should have won that game playing in the outdoors. I think the whole moniker, this team can't win outdoors, I think it's blown out the window. I think it's built to win on any surface. And I think the offensive line has gotten better, and it's going to continue to get better with opening holes for the running game. But a lot of it's situational. If you're trying to run the clock out late, you know what teams, they know what you're going to do, and it's hard to do it.
It's funny, they've actually had success doing that this year.
Yeah.
Even when the run game was playing poorly,
In the second
they were
half.
running out
Right.
the clock against teams. I mean, were they even doing that against Atlanta in week 1? They were certainly doing it against Arizona and Miami in weeks 3 and 4. So it's not a huge concern. Like I said, there's only one run that I think you point to and you say they failed on that run late. The other ones, like Juan said, I mean, you're going to gain 2, you're going to gain 1. They've done okay in 3rd and 1. They've done okay in 4th and 1. So, yeah, nothing